Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's slightly belated edition of SIG Node. It is Tuesday, October 5th, 2021, and I believe the first item on our agenda today is what's going on with PR, Sergey?
Yeah, if you had any FOMO with what's happening, don't fear. Nothing major happening. We have a few PRs open, like I think a little bit less than usual, but pretty close to average. And out of closed PRs, only one got rotten. It's trying to increase some buffer for bare metal running kubelet. It just rot away. So if you want to fish it out of rotten and take a second look, please do that. And from merged PRs, we have one bug fix when we reverted the change with how we compile kubelet and consume more memory. I don't see many other like very interesting. I mean, there are quite a few PRs got merged, but I think this one very interesting one. So if you're interested, please take a look.
For those who aren't familiar with that one, I believe SIG release for the 122 release turned on ASLR in the kubelet and all Kubernetes components, and they, as a result, consume significantly more memory. So we've reverted that until we can have a little bit more discussion. Let's see. Anything else, Sergey? Sounds like
not for this topic. Yeah.
Cool. Next thing on the agenda, I have a reminder. We as a SIG suggested that we would have a soft code freeze in 2 weeks, a little bit under 2 weeks now. And also next week we have KubeCon. Now I haven't heard any pushback from anybody on this soft freeze deadline where we're hoping that everything that's going to beta will be merged. But on the other hand, I haven't seen PRs for the majority of the things that need to go to beta. So I feel like if you are not able to make this deadline, like please say something now so we can push it or that we can adjust accordingly. Because it would be really nice if at least we have like everything up and ready to review and work in progress PRs open and whatnot. Also on the topic of KubeCon next week, SIG Node is having a session. It is a virtual session, so you can go ahead and attend and watch the recording if you are so inclined. I included the link in the agenda. Any questions or comments?
I just had a comment about the soft freeze deadline. Given that KubeCon is going to be next week, it might be a bit challenging to solicit reviews and approvals from the node kind of reviewers, maintainers, approvers. So I was wondering, does it make sense to maybe push it back for a week, given that KubeCon is next week?
I have no objections to doing that. Nobody has asked me to do that. Does anybody else have any thoughts on pushing back the deadline a week? I have no problem with doing it, but it looks like Derek is +1 in the chat, as is Mrinal. So, but lots of +1s in the chat. Okay, we'll push this back 1 week.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
I'll take a note on the agenda. And I believe next up on the agenda, we have Sergey talking about Docker shim deprecation, and I need to give you co-host. It is done. What's going on with Docker shim, Sergey?
Yeah, let me try to share and I will start talking. So the reason I'm talking about it now is we plan to remove Docker shim completely from kubelet in 124. So 123 is the last release when we can do some major changes so customer can try out and give us feedback if something is not working or something needs to change. And I prepared this little status document. So just mostly brain dump on what's going on and how we're doing with Docker shim deprecation. And in the end of this document, I also prepared some questionnaire that I really like to distribute among end users and understand the state of the world, what people maybe complain about or like have as a blockers. I know I have some visibility in what's happening in GKE, but I really like to understand what's happening across the community, wider than just GKE. To start off, I want to say that all, major clouds, three clouds that I listed here, I don't know like about major, already switched, have an offering for Docker Shim. Interesting thing that AKS, like it's lexicographical order, no preferences. AKS is starting support of Docker Containerd in 1.19, and it's a hard switch for Linux. So customers have no choice; they need to transition to Containerd, and this is a kind of clean transition. On Windows, though, it happened like on Linux, it happened in July. On Windows, it happened quite recently in May, and it started with 1.20. So we just started getting some customers transitioning to Windows, and as far as I can tell, there is not much feedback yet. So hopefully we will get more feedback and more validation before we go into 1.24. On EKS, situation is a little bit worse because customer just got a option to transition to 1.20 to Containerd in 1.21, and it happened in July. So this is pushing it a little bit because starting July it's available. So assuming customers started testing it, I don't know how much feedback we'll get from EKS customers by the code freeze of 1.23. But let's see, maybe we'll have some good feedback. Or maybe everything just works. And I don't know Windows situation on EKS, to be fair. I didn't look any deeper. On GKE, we had a Containerd support for quite a while. It started 1.14, so we had some customers already running on Containerd. In 1.19, we switched to Containerd as default and recommended runtime, and we have quite reasonable chunk of Containerd customers now, and many customers went through transition smoothly, but we uncovered a lot of issues with transition that most of them are fixed now. Windows, same situation as with AKS. We just offering it in June, started offering it in June, and we don't have many Windows customers transition to Containerd yet, not even trying it yet. So this is a little bit alarming because before 1.23 release, we unlikely will get any reasonable validation on real production workload for Windows Containerd. But yeah, we're still hoping to get any feedback. So the situation, and I said the most alarming thing is not Linux, it's Windows, but hopefully we can get some feedback by 1.24. And another thing that I wanted to mention here is Mirantis announced sig Dockerd. I don't know the usage of it. It just been announced and there is a repository. So if anybody knows any information about how it works comparing to Docker Shim, does it have any issues, can we recommend it to people? That will be really nice to highlight, and maybe even highlight in our documentation on Kubernetes IO, so people will be aware of this option. So this is state of the world, and among known issues, we in GKE switching to Containerd, so we uncovered quite a few Containerd issues. If you look at the Containerd release notes, you'll find some known issues. Like some of them on top of my mind is environment variables were shared between containers in a pod, unintentionally, of course, and some environment variables were missing. So that was fixed and cherry-picked in all Containerd versions, all support Containerd versions. But there were more issues like that. Right now, we also tracking some other issues. One known issue, we always saying that Containerd, like migration from Docker Shim is no op and runtime will be exactly the same. Turn out there is a very old legacy thing that Docker Shim supports this media type for images, and Containerd doesn't support it. I don't know about Cryo. So this is kind of like not compatible specification, not OCI compatible specification for containers, but we still have containers with the specification, and Dockershim perfectly fine with that. They just support backward compatibility, and newer runtimes doesn't support it. So there is not like even our statement that in runtime it will be exactly the same is not completely true, but it's not a major issue. Like I think most of the recent images are already compiled fine. We met a couple customers with older images though. Then exact probe timeout difference in execution, how it behaves. We fixed the bug. So whenever bug is fixed, the behavior is the same across Dockershim and Containerd. But if this flag is not set to true, so people still running with a bug, so if they don't want exact probe timeout to be expected, then behavior will be different on Dockershim and Containerd, and it may result in some probes and containers unexpectedly marked as failed when before they weren't marked as failed because Docker reacted on exact probe timeout differently. And lastly, yeah, there is like a issue with that we observe a lot. We don't know the root cause yet. This is failed to reserve container name when CRI tries to create a Kubernetes tries to create a sandbox, and the creation of sandbox fails, and then it retries again, and then Containerd complains that this name already taken. We don't know whether it's Containerd issue or like theoretically it should be the same for Dockershim and Containerd, but we see it a lot more often on Containerd, so it may be a Containerd issue, not a kubelet, but we're still investigating. And then there are some Linux specific problems, there are Windows specific problems. On Linux, we start seeing more and more what we expected, that not all vendors support the Containerd yet. One notable example is New Relic, for instance. They don't support Containerd or any other runtime to be except Dockershim for monitoring with their agent. They plan to support it by end of year, at least what I heard, but it's not there yet. And that's obviously blocking some customers to adopt Containerd and try it out and uncover more issues with that. And then there are some differences in how C-advisor behaves. There are some missing metrics. There are some labels that are incompatible, have different format between Containerd and Dockershim. I listed a couple issues. I think we fixed most of the bugs in C-advisors, and there is a C-advisor build now available that behaves exactly the same as Dockershim. So collects imagefs metrics, collects all the proper labels, and we really hope to merge this C-advisor build into 123 of Containerd or for kubelet, so we'll have this bug fixed for everybody who doesn't use standalone C-advisor. And yeah, that wasn't quite trivial because we took a dependency on CRI, and there is like cross dependencies, and David is doing a great job of like navigating this vendoring dependencies. Then another legacy issue with Dockershim. Dockershim at some point took have a bug that they, I mean, not a bug, behavior that they set IPv6 or disable IPv6 or enable, I think it's disable IPv6. And the other runtimes doesn't do that because it's not required. It's just how Dockershim doing stuff. So yeah, this is some things that will be different across Dockershim and other runtimes because Dockershim has a specific behavior, and other runtimes needs to accommodate for this difference if they want to. Then yeah, another like Containerd ignores some privilege pods mapping. It's Containerd specific, and then there is an IP leakage that was fixed recently on Containerd. Again, when sandbox creation fails or like tear down fails, and something IP maybe leaking, and it's because of some race condition and how ordering of creation of network and the creation of sandbox.
Hey, Sergey, we have a few more agenda items. So is there anything else that we want to cover on this one, or?
So yeah, work needed. I listed some work items here that needs to be done, and some work items that already taken dependency on Docker shim deprecation. So people saying 124 it will be gone, so let's not fix the issue. So let's, if anybody interested to help out with these items, please do it. It will be great to have everything fixed by 123, so end users will be able to try it out and make sure that 124 we're safe to remove it. And then questionnaire-wise, I suggested this questionnaire. If everybody, please, whoever interested, please review, and then I'll translate it into Google Forms and start sending it around. That's it. Thank you. Any
Sounds
questions?
good. Hearing no questions, let's move on to the next agenda item because we've got a few things left. Paco, who is not here, I assume because of time zones, linked a PR and says, my application to be a SIG Node reviewer has not been responded to after a few weeks. I'm not sure what that means. Does it mean no objections or declined? And how could I make it happen? I would like to get some advice on how to be a qualified reviewer. So I think that's a question for Derek.
Yeah, so I commented on his PR. So Paco had reached out while we were trying to establish some go-forward guidelines on how SIG Node would handle reviewers and approvers. So for awareness, we did send a draft out to existing sub-project leads on what qualifications we would look for to provide a basis for that going forward. I think comments on that doc have largely dried up in the last week or two, so I think we can put it forward for the rest of the project to review. I think by the standards outlined in that document, Paco meets the criteria for reviewer, and so I think both Renal and myself have +1 his PR, and thank you to Paco for his patience and his willingness to contribute in the SIG.
Is that doc gonna be shared with the SIG at some point soon?
Yeah, so I think if we can actually get an ACK from all the existing sub-project leads within the SIG, I don't think there's a reason to not share it. There's a couple open comments on it from Kevin, but I don't think any of them are blocking. So I would like to get that. I regret we didn't have it shared earlier. So if those folks who had it shared with them previously can weigh in, which is particularly the sub-project leads, please do. And if no comments, I guess we can share it out to the SIG before next week's meeting.
And speaking of next week's meeting, next week is KubeCon, so I think
I'm
we will
sorry,
not be
our
meeting
next
next
meeting.
week. Yeah. I should add, next week we are not meeting in the main SIG meeting, but we will still be meeting in the CI sub-project as we are doing our alternate time. That's a little bit more APAC friendly. So we don't expect those people to be attending KubeCon, so we will keep that meeting time. Because KubeCon is in a time zone that they can't make. So I guess next item on the agenda, Sergey, you want to talk about node test tags cleanup?
Yeah, we discussed this a couple times already. We were looking at not conformance. What does it mean to be not conformant test? And we've been discussing what's the difference between not feature and feature. And I was analyzing this test and test grid that we have, like test and test cases that we have. So result of this investigation is this document with a proposal how we can clean up this all the SIG Node tests. I will entertain it through SIG testing and maybe SIG architecture as well for not conformance. And if you have any comments or feedback, please read it up and give your opinion. It also has this very nice spreadsheet. I took all the test cases that we have today. There is a name of test case, and then you can filter it by, is it disruptive, for instance, or is it like, is it a feature? And then you can filter it by, is it disruptive? And then you can filter it by, is it not disruptive? And then you can filter it by, is it feature? And then you can filter it by, is it not feature? And then you can filter it by, is it not feature? And then you can filter it by, is it not feature? And then you can filter it by, is it not feature? And then you can filter it by, is it not feature? And then you can filter it by, is it not feature? And then you can filter it by, is it not feature? And then you can filter it by, is it not feature? And then you can filter it by, is it not feature? And then you can filter it by, is it not feature? And then you can filter it by, is it not feature? And then you can filter it by, is it not feature? And then you can filter it by, is it not feature? And then you can filter it by, is it not feature? And then you can filter it by, is it not feature? And then you can filter it by, is it not feature? And then you can filter it by, is it not feature? And then you can filter it by, is it not feature? And then you can filter it by, is it not feature? And then you can filter out disruptive and not conformance at the same time. You see, there is no disruptive not conformance, which is good. So yeah, play with that if you're interested. It really helped me to run this analysis. Yeah, that's all I want to say. Please read it up and give your feedback.
Awesome. Thank you, Sergey. Any questions on that? Sounds like no. Last item on the agenda, I just wanted to paste this in for my email with respect to soft code freeze. So we have a bunch of caps up, and I took a look at every cap and then pasted any PRs that were linked to the cap. The vast majority of our caps for this milestone do not have linked code PRs right now. Like it's more than half. So I would, if you are one of the people who owns a cap on this list where it is blank, I would really appreciate if you could either go and update the issue in the Kubernetes enhancements repo, or go and update your PR in the Kubernetes repo and just link back to that issue. Because right now, I don't know which things are for which caps, and so it makes it very hard to prioritize review for the features that we have versus have not prioritized for this milestone. So if you are an author of one of these things, I will send an email to the mailing list as well. But like, please feel free to either go and fill this out right now in the agenda, or go ahead and link back your PR. I'll spend a little bit more time hunting for these things later. But right now, this is basically the state of the world in terms of what the release team knows about, and therefore what we would know about if we weren't like going and digging in the Kubernetes repo. And this is like, it's clearly not all work that we're planning for this release. So if you could surface that, that would be much appreciated. I see Francesco's adding some notes.
Hey, Elena, for some of the Windows caps that do have some significant node overlap, should I add those to this list here too to track, just to make sure that there's PR traction for some of those?
I think that as long as the SIG Node approvers are like properly, tagged and informed, and that you're tracking the PRs correctly in the enhancements repo, I don't think there should be any issue. These were everything from the enhancements spreadsheet that I pulled that were labeled as being sponsored by like solely SIG Node. I know there are also some Windows ones as well that I think were like co-sponsoring. So.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
I think we also are not going to be subjecting SIG Windows to our own internal deadlines because we can't do that. So.
Okay, we'll still try and have all of the PRs up. Just
that would be awesome.
Prevent,
it'll make it easier for the release team too. Like this will make everyone's lives easier. So, yeah. I know, for example, like there's nothing under swap support right now. I think because I've been so heads down on fixing blocking bugs that I haven't had a chance to work on feature stuff. So like, I know that one is definitely behind, but according to like the caps, this is, kind of what's been linked in there. If you're adding things to this list, please make sure that they're also updated in the enhancements repo item, because otherwise no one will be able to find it again.
A template for PR is a little bit confusing because it has cap and this like square brackets, and then like people typically don't like.
Yeah, that's mostly for the docs
into, like,
team.
A comment, yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't actually do the link back. So
yeah, so just paste a comment with a direct link to the enhancement, and it will solve it.
Any questions about this? Any other agenda items? Sounds like no. Thanks for joining us, everyone, today. And thanks for joining a little bit late. Hope to see you all next week. Or, well, not next week, week after KubeCon. Cheers, everyone.